May from Grand Rapids. So, you know, yeah, just got to figure this out with them. Let me see. Come back for half hour. Grand Rapids. Big Maze. Yep, the whole thing with Eric Mays. Yeah, rest in peace to Eric Mays. It goes without saying that when I have these discussions that grassroots people are always the most important because um everybody looks for people that are names who blow up politician wise, but it's the grassroots people that are the ones that make the changes happen. Um, you know, and they're the ones that you remember because they had to put the front line. And it's a tribute to the fact that they take a pounding. They don't get the notoriety as the bigger wigs get, but don't get it twisted. It take everybody to speak out on issues and to say what was going on. And Eric Mays was one of those cats. It's very important that that's remembered. You know, and you need that. You need that. You need that. Um, he spoke out, and you know, they don't want you talking too much. They want you. you know. So this is what they do. You need people that speak for the people, and it's important that that's. I can't emphasize that enough. That is said. You know. So before people write off and say, "Well, you're a councilman or you're just a that," no, grassroots people is what make the country. And a lot of people seem to forget that. For instance, you take Dr. King, you take a lot of people that marched and walked. They were grassroots people. They were not household names. They didn't become presidents or nothing like that, but didn't have to. What's happening? How you doing? They were people that were talking about real life issues, and they were stating things from a ground roots floor. So and they represented. They didn't have the big, um, the the money, the corporate, but they had the impact. They had that. So it's important that that is remembered. That's very important that's remembered. So Eric Mays would definitely be a big loss for a community in Flint. His suspension was bogus, but if you're doing something for the people and you become a movement, you can bet your bottom dollar there are haters and there are people looking to try to exterminate you by any means. They're not going to play friendly. They're not going to be fair. They're going to come after you, and they're going to and try to intimidate and bully. That's what they want. And they don't want people to be fair and balanced. So um, it's a very cold world like that. And I'm glad that it was brought to my attention about him, you know, because Flint went through some very bad issues with that water. And, Steve Harvey made some bad jokes. People try to downplay it. People seem to forget that when you live in a country, you're not just, it's a whole country. It's not just because of you're in the burbs or you live in this way. Everybody's impacted. And what becomes your problem can be everybody's problem. Don't think like you. So um, it's important that I'm glad that that was brought to me about his passing tonight. He's only 65. Of course, people are going to be conspiracies. There are going to be people that say things, and it could be true to it. I'm not going to argue. I still to this day wonder how Johnny Cochran really transitioned. So you never know. But anytime somebody is a movement, anytime somebody speaks on something, anytime someone has a platform that changes the landscape or shapes up the views or goes against the status quo, people are going to have a problem, and they're going to you're going to have critics, and you're going to have people that don't like it because it doesn't fit the status quo, especially when it comes from a black perspective. Never get it twisted. Never get it twisted. So you know it's one of those things that you just kind of got to deal with. So, but I definitely wanted to address that about Eric Mays. Rest in peace. I'm glad it was brought to my attention. And even if I have to talk by myself, anybody doesn't come through, I don't have a problem with voicing about council people because they do play a big part. You remember in LA a couple years ago, those racists that viewed their venom, and good and bad, council people have a place because they're on the local front, and that's how it leans itself to becoming another, you know. So it's important that you know, get that, get that message across of what you're saying. So that's what I'm saying with that. So, you know, so, but I appreciate that that came out about what have you. And I wanted to address that because it's very important that that doesn't go without, and I still might probably do a video tomorrow about him, but I'm glad it got relayed to me tonight. So it wasn't too late to tap into it and do that. What's up? I told you I was coming back in a half hour. I just got through, and I got your message about Eric Mays. So I just got through talking about it. So if you go back and watch this live stream, I addressed it, and I talk about the importance of it because it is important that you have a local leader, counselor, etc., that speaks on issues that talks about because grassroots is the thing that makes America tick. By the time you get all booted and zooted as far as being the quote unquote politician and your office chair and all that, you're going to be playing for a different ball game, different club. But when you're doing it on the grassroots level, it carries different weight. It carries different weight. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And I appreciate you bringing that to me about him. He definitely got whiteballed, and powers that be didn't want him there no more. You talk about the irony of irony, so that is the reality. So, yeah. That's usually how it goes. That's how it goes. That's usually how it goes. Angelina, what is this life about? How you doing? What a question. If you're asking in technical terms, well, there's a lot to learn. I think in this life it's about giving. I think it's about the betterment that you help others, that you don't, that you look out for other people. And I think that you want to humble yourself. I think that's what it's really about. That's a great question, though, Angelina. I mean, that's really powerful. That's an eye opener. I don't usually get asked that, but I appreciate that because I look at it from a spiritual perspective. And it's a lot of that you have to do. You have to get over yourself, and then you have to understand that other people. It's like when you're driving or you're walking, wherever you're going, you're looking out for others. It's like if you wear a mask and you go into a building, it's not just about you protecting you; you're protecting others. That's what I think it's about. It's about giving back and being humble. Understand that it's a gift. You own nothing, and life is one big old lease. Yeah, you want to own a house in your livelihood now or what you got, but you know what I mean. Because it actually tax and you don't pay your taxes and stuff, they come and repo it. So again, everything is a lease. We don't take nothing with us, but what we remember is our soul, what we gave, how we treated people, we said, what we did. That is your legacy. That's what this life's about. You got to come to that point, though. Great take, Angelina. Appreciate that. Horace Grant was. Oakley was a bodybuilder, and Oakley didn't really do anything but pretty much be like a bodyguard type of player, or he was a tough dude. He did his part, and he may have could have gotten more, but Horace was a better fit. You know, he served a purpose, but Horace Grant was a better fit. I saw that. You asking me what I thought about the fight against the Pelicans? Well, he was defending, which was overblown because Kevin Love did not body slam Zion. Okay. Zion fell, got back up. Dude got into Kevin Love. Butler was protecting his teammate, and then dude went for his neck. What do you think is going to happen? And of course, Jimmy Butler ain't no punk. Now, Jimmy's a lot of things, but a punk ain't one of them. He gonna go to Knuckle City. And the Pelican dude was when you push a guy's neck, you're going for something different. It's not like you're going for the face. You're going at his neck. So of course it reacted like it did. Because these guys are 7, 6, 7 tall cats, and that's not just some, you know. So yeah, I had no problem with Jimmy retaliating, not at all. Appreciate that question, Angelina. That made my night, though. I really like that one a lot because I usually don't get asked. That's pretty deep. But yeah, Horace Grant better play than Oakley, and no problem with Jimmy Butler fighting. Oakley though was more of a loyalist than he. And what Oakley, I can't tell if he could have scored more, but I know what he was doing. Oh yeah, he ready to scrap. Spo ain't no punk. Spo ain't no punk because he almost got down with Butler about a year ago. He ain't no punk. No, because you gotta act like you gotta bring it. First of all, New Orleans don't want that smoke. They don't have anybody over there that's tough like that. If they had a tough guy, they were getting Zion's behind. They tell him put down the Twinkies and the cheeseburgers and bring your butt out to the court. So they're not they're not tough guys. They're not tough. They're guys who are strong, but they're not tough. Because somebody would have stepped to Zion and said, "Look, man, as talented as you is, big as you is, we should be a Western Conference finalist. We should be at least 2 rounds deep. And you've been here how many years? And we scraping the bare. We might be a first round casualty. Come on now." So No one has stepped to him, challenge him. That's what I sense. But they don't have nobody over there that can stop no Jimmy Butler. So Denver and the Clippers. I don't know where you get this Timberwolves and Lakers crap from. I'm not buying either one of those two teams. We must not be watching the same NBA. Clippers got a better chance. Dallas got a better chance. I'm not. The Timberwolves, record wise, should be, but can I trust them? Can I trust that they will fall in line with Ant? The Lakers? Are you for real? The Lakers? The Lakers? What? And look, they're a playing tournament team, and I got to make this quick walk, so I'm gonna turn this to the other side, but keep on talking. They're a playoff tournament team. They're not a team that I see that's going to do anything, really. So I don't see them doing anything. I don't see it. I could be wrong. I just don't see it. You think so? I had to give me some drink real quick. Give me a warm drink. The East is wide open because you don't trust Milwaukee and Boston. That's what you're saying, right? I told you about my Miami Heat. Told you. I told you. I don't trust Boston because I'm so tired of hearing. Now they trying to talk about. They trying to talk about Tatum for MVP. And I'm like, why does Tatum sound like Joel Embiid? And yeah, he's been to a finals. Why does he sound like this? Why does it sound like you settling for something that, and then he's wondering why, you know, I don't trust the Celtics. I told you before, and I say it again, unless Larry Bird or Paul Pierce can come back. And I saw that thing about, they try to say some executives were talking about Pierce being better than D Wade. I'm like, no, he wasn't better. But I'm gonna say it like this about Pierce. He's a big time player. They don't have nobody in Boston like that. That you got to get on their back and win. They all choked in the finals. Not just him. Jalen got picked. He told Draymond the other night at the All-Star break, he said, I'll be ready for you. I said, how you gonna be ready for him? Neither one of y'all gonna go to no finals. But how you gonna be ready? You can't even beat the Heat. Everybody ain't a 7-game series, Boston. So I'm not feeling the Celtics. I just don't play good enough defense. Um, and the other problem I have with Boston is that they too samey time. They just depend on a 3-point shot. They depend on too much of the same. I'm just not sold on them. I just don't think they have a leader. That's my problem. They have two very talented cats. But if they had one dude who could put them two in place, they would be a scary team. Defense is a problem. Defense is a problem because you didn't replace Drew Holiday. You don't utilize Lopez the right way. You're dependent on Giannis to leap through the balcony and then Dame on the kick out. So you're trying to play a 2.5 man 3 team. Your bench is suspect. and you don't really you just either hoping that you can out athlete teams. You're not really. They did beat Minnesota the other night, but I don't know. The reason why they're not taken serious is because it's like Giannis is on a trajectory of greatness. He doesn't have anybody else, not to that level. And I think that their lack of cohesion is gonna hurt them. The Sixers, Joel Embiid, can he get healthy? And can they get a third option to be consistent? Can the bench stay up? You know, can they do enough? I think Nick Nurse is the right coach. I just think that the attitudes have to be, hey, we got to make this happen. So that's the key. And it's all about the postseason anyway. We're not even worried about the regular season. Let me tell you something. It don't matter where you finish in the East. This ain't the 90s or the 00s. Okay. When basketball became a jump shooting league, home court advantage, home cook, and all that crap went out the window. Them days is gone. Teams bust your butt anywhere now. It's not a problem. But that's the problem with the Sixers. It's the postseason. I think the Heat is consistency during the regular season. I think they have a lot of ebbs and flows. We talk about, will Tyler Hero be like this? Will Jimmy Butler be like this? Will Bam be like this? Duncan Robinson. It's the same thing. And then it's always that one position. And Terry got hurt. Terry Rozier got. So what will they get for in certain plays? Will they get enough to get to the next level? It's just those things that still rattle, which aren't cohesive. I think Spo does a great job as far as assembling them, and I think their defense, but their offense is the problem. You know, they are in a situation where this is the best and worst of times, what I call the Golden State Warrior era of the three ball. On one hand, a guy like Jimmy Butler flourishes because he's a tweener guard and he can flourish. The other problem, the problem they got, they don't have guys who can go tip for tat with scoring like that because that's not Miami Heat basketball. So it's a blessing and a curse. But yet, they are a dangerous enough team. They can get to the finals, but as you can tell, the way they lost to Lakers, they were undersized, and Lakers had better athleticism in the bubble. Against Denver, they were undersized, and Denver had better shooters and had better rotation. So, yeah, they play with a lot of heart, and it's to be commendable. However, they don't have that alpha. They don't have that dude. And Butler plays that role, but it's mainly postseason, but they don't have that dude consistent. And that's the problem. And I can't believe Pat Riley's going to say, okay, it's going to be a Johnny sometime when I need you all the time. Either they make some guys wait, or they put some guys in, or they allow your college career. They got ways of mixing it up. No one really cares, though. No one really cares. Everybody eventually gets in the Hall of Fame almost. So it's not really it's probably the least entertaining of all the Hall of Fames, if you must know. People can debate the football Hall of Fame and of course baseball. No one sits around really tripping about the basketball one. Mm-mm. There's some guys you wonder why it took so long, but it's not something. All right, what's up? What's up? Glad you came through, Cruz. Yeah, it's not one of those things that people debate. So I don't to be honest with you, I really don't have a pet peeve about the NBA Hall of Fame because they made people like Bob McAdoo, Adrian Dantley, you know. The NFL playoff pet peeve? Ooh, this is a good one. So, you know what they're gonna do, right? You know what they're gonna do. Eventually, they're gonna try to make it 19 weeks, maybe 20 weeks. They will try to have a double wild cards because football is highly addictive. That's why they're able to push the Super Bowl into February. Now, I hate it because I wish teams would be done at the end of December or January 1st, not this extended stay. But that's what they're going to do. So, obviously, if you a bubble team, they might have a play-in bubble for the NFL. Don't think they won't. Um, I can't really say I got a lot of because things pretty much go as they're supposed to. You know, um, you know, I can't because I told you before Green Bay should have played Detroit for the NFC West, and that didn't happen. And um, stuff pretty much even out. I think. I mean, Kansas City's run. Who's going to argue going up against Tua, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and the 49ers? So it's hard. You can't. That's great. That's a great run. Not necessarily a great team, but a great run. So, you know, can't really find fault. But I think that's what they will do. I think eventually they will probably try to get another weekend. They're going to find a way to manipulate it. No knock against Sweetness. And he's one of my 5 favorite running backs ever. No knock. No knock. Um one of the greatest running backs, greatest players ever. Can't say anything on the field about him because he was tough. I mean, he played in that cold butt city with no quarterback for a lot of his years. None. And to some people in Chicago, he's still the greatest athlete from that place, even though Jordan won all them rings and them other people just saying. Peyton carried crazy weight. Kaepernick, the only knock is that he you can't go back to the scene of the crime and then act like you got away, and then you're gonna put your hand and then wonder, well, what, how, question it and try to do autopsy, because the NFL will never touch him again. The white folks wanted him out. They paid him to go, and he didn't want to be a backup, and I get it. He didn't have to be. He beat them. He exposed their racism, institutionalized, systematic. But you can't say I want to come back. They're not going to budge. They whiteballed him. They had a president who whiteballed him. There is no coming back. You can't wear a blazer. You should. You should have Jay-Z's job. But we don't live in a fair world. The reason being, we ain't past the kneeling like Jay-Z said. They got all those logos in the end zones and everything is a reflection of Cap. So Cap won, but what did he win? He won money, but what did he win? He got whiteballed from a league. Somewhere along the line, they'll write a book about the Kaepernick um, racist agenda, which doesn't get talked about near enough. That'd be reason enough to boycott the NFL. He got done dirty, just like my dude Raul got done dirty by the NBA. But see, people would rather be entertained and watch people dancing and prancing and doing that stuff than to speak out on it. That's a fact. You didn't see 2 black men get whiteballed and expelled because they stood on beliefs, and both those leagues ended up putting racial slogans and stuff to verify, clarify stuff. And yet and the anthem is known to be a racist anthem. So, if you never wanted to watch pro sports again, there you go. I've seen it 15, 20 years apart. Ken Stabler, the thing I had with him is that sometimes he was throwing games and like he had gambled or something. Something about him just seemed kind of drunk and off. He was great, but he was also reckless. And Stabler looked kind of shaky in some spots. Talented dude, but there was a lot going on. I always felt something. I felt a certain energy. Sometimes you could say there should be 8 teams. This year, did we get the best with Michigan and Washington? I'm glad Michigan won, but the Michigan Alabama game was really the real bowl. Then you're gonna always have those people that wonder why Georgia didn't get their chance because they lost one game, they paid a price. So it could have been, but I thought Michigan was the team that won. But not just saying it as a fan, but um, you know, if you have to have an 8 team format, if you have a lot of two lose, I don't have no TV wrestling pet peeves because it's all politics, it's stage, and there's nothing to really get upset about. It's what it is, and and what am I going to say that they're not, because again, they have priorities of people that they want. It's a business, you know. People still go and pay to see The Rock come back or John Cena come back, so that's on them. It's entertainment, you know, but it's a business, so you know. He was very arrogant, and I might have to do that video about to say it loud because it did come on A&E. I didn't really want to talk about it too much. Mick Jagger and Questlove are both running, and I don't really care about neither one of them. It gets a bit jarring. I wish there was a different James Brown. I think he could turn people off with his ways, but he's such an important musical figure. I mean, it's like he's one of the 10 most important musical figures ever, period. And but he was a control freak. He was one of those guys that, he could be a bit much, and sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't. It just depends on who you ask. Uh, you know, love him as an entertainer, as an artist, game changer, even though he didn't always give people their credits, But he changed the course of music. You know, um, he was a black man who let it be known what he went through. Um, he was a very complex cat. So I got respect from him as an artist, but he could be a bit heavy much. And there's a lot going on with that. So if you follow his career, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because he thought he was the end all be all. He was one of the 10 most important. I'm not going to argue with that, but he gets a little bit heavy. But I do put him in the same category as Wilt Chamberlain, Jim Brown, like those kind of people that were such a standard you have to acknowledge. I will say that. And, you know, uh, Jack Johnson, too, is a boxer. Joe Louis, that kind of thing. They're people that you said about. Donna Ross, she was mean, treated people like crap. And that's on the personal side. As an artist, same thing, because that thing she did with Oprah back on 2000 when she had the Supreme reunion and she was going to act funny about Mary Wilson. I'm like, really? Auerbach was just arrogant, but he changed the course of basketball. It's kind of like, and it's funny you mentioned those three, because one thing they all got in common, they all groundbreakers. Donna Ross led the most important female vocal group ever, because the Supremes are the motherlode of female singing groups. All you Destiny Child fans, that's where she got it from. And Donna Ross was did everything. James Brown paid the way you see so much. And Auerbach, as a general manager, head coach, did the whole nine and integrated the league. So, those were groundbreakers. Hendrix was another groundbreaker. No pet peeve really, because he was an incredible talent. He was deeper than people give him credit for. He was blacker than people give him credit for too. Can't really. I liked him. I have respect for Hendrix. So he's one of those people that I'm not gonna say I'm saying anybody's perfect, but I had no real pet peeve with him. See them others, I had some stuff. James Brown is well documented. Donna Ross well documented. Arbach, dopey white dude who had a great used a character that blew up. He's a bigot. Said some suspect things. I liked him when I was a kid with the Rocky thing. Meathead. Sometimes he comes off cool. Sometimes he comes across like he's missing, two apples short of a picnic on the basket. So, you know, as an actor, he overrated, but he found vehicles that blew him up. And but I think he comes across like a meathead, and it's had some suspect things he said. So I had to separate the two. Rocky's iconic, but he ain't the deepest light bulb that's flicking the lights. So, you know, time has a way of kind of making you look at certain people a certain way. As I told you before, he's a never was. He's a charismatic, good actor, didn't go nowhere. Plays the same role, and he's good for what he do, but I'm not, I can't find fault with him because he never offended me. Maybe he offended me. I kind of wish he had of. I mean, because aside from Ricky, that's all we ever think of with Chestnut. Most of us who followed his career, we only see him as Ricky. We don't really care about Two Can Play That Game Part 88, the best man to an extent. But again, he's played the same kind of role. Smug, big jock, you know. And if he'd have had a half of his career, he would have been as big as Michael B. Jordan. Think about that, because he was a prototype, muscular, but not too buff and too big, but just as, like middle road, rocker suit person vibe, smile, all that. He didn't connect. Michael B. Jordan did. Think about that. Now, when you talk about Chestnut, think about that part. Because he was he predated. Now, I like Dougie Fresh. He's got an interview right now with Willie D. Sidekick dude. Him and Slick Rick. And he worked with Prince, and he worked with a lot of people. He, Doug beat bopping. Everybody back in the day used to beat bop. And if you're talking about beat bopping, he's probably one of the faces. If there was a Mount Rushmore beat boppers, he's one of the faces of it, because that's a lost art. Dougie Fresh. And I used to like the way he used to just hit them runs. Nobody beats, and Biz Market too. But the other, no. He was in his lane. He was not going to be more or less. He was just going to be in his lane. And I told you about rappers. It's hard to call a rapper a bum because the criteria is different. Meaning, if they can make one great album, so like some people look at Nas and say he's made one or two, that's all you can ask for, because it's a fast turnover genre. Nas does still have a career, by the way, but you know what I mean. I mean, if you know anything about hip hop, ain't nobody it come a certain time don't see you having a 30-year career. It's not like pop music, R&B music, country, gospel. Hip hop is not like that. Case in point, Rakim can't even get in the Hall of Fame right now. He should be. He take too long. He acts like he's working on this grand masterpiece, like he's Arthur Fiedler or Barry White, like he's got this great concerto, and he doesn't always put his music out. Some people think it's because his ghosts want more money, and he's just frustrating like that. He gets all this love about that Detox album. They've been talking about that Detox album for like 25 years. So that's my knock against him. He sits on a lot of stuff. And it kind of, but he's made his mark. He ain't got he's made money off them headphones alone. Yeah, he has ghostwriters. Yeah. He has a lot of ghostwriters. He has ghost producers too. But the thing about it is only Scott Storch is one of the few that actually blew up. But no one has ever had the kind of career that was a threat to him. That's the fact. And his being a great talent scout is what separates him, because he put Snoop on. That alone is worth tons. His name brand is worth tons. He pushed Eminem's thing. He helped with 50. So Dre always is aligned at the right spot, right place, right time. He is cha-ching. He is money. But yeah, he's had all that, but he's just hits. Usher pet peeve? Well, I told you. He's got the guy that's like 8 out of half out of 10. He gets everything right. It's just that little fine thing of put. Hey, he had the one or two right songs at that Super Bowl performance. It could have been right there with the best of the best. He's the guy that just misses the mark. But the mark is like wide right, wide left. He's close, but I just can't get him over the hump. And I like Usher, but you've been around 30, 50 years and you get all this sales and all this stuff, and you still come across like you're a junior whopper Michael Jackson, like you just can't get across the finish line. That's a pet peeve. It should be something that's more deeper than that, and it just ain't there. Snoop, he well, if we're talking musically, he plays the same old role. He tries different things, he plays the same role. But he's, you know, um, had one of the most golden voices ever. Not saying he was the best rapper, the best lyricist, nothing like that, but that voice was everything. To be alive 30 years ago, to hear that voice, the way it would hit on the record, wasn't nothing like it. Wasn't nothing like it. But he just kind of wears on it's the same old thing with him. So you take it or you leave it. He become everybody's favorite uncle and he's like the face of hip hop. Take it or leave it. Mainly his knock against his politics, and he plays the same old kind of slinging dude. I mean, his politics is corny because I remember when he came at that GOP thing when he was talking to that chair, and that was hilarious. But um, he's not somebody that I really take too deep. You know, I don't really. I mean, he's at some movies. Carson, hmm, I ain't really didn't have none with Carson. Carson was ahead of the game. And you're really going old school tonight. I don't know who you've been talking to. Oh, Johnny was the dude. I mean, he was the standard of late night to me. You know, it's kind of like the Red Auerbach of late night. He's the standard. Go back to what I said about James Brown or Diana Ross, Hendrix on guitar, um, Louis Armstrong with trumpet and singing. It's one of them guys that's a standard. Like Ed Sullivan was a standard for us, like the entertainment, bringing them out. But Carson, with the jokes and Doc Severinsen band and the Ed McMahon thing, he did the Jordan Pippen thing, the Magic and the Kareem thing, however you want to put it, the 1-2 punch. He made it cool. He was a lifestyle. He really made it cool. He owned the rights to his thing. He was something else. So I respect him as a businessman. I mean, his show was that was the end all be all. You got on there. He wasn't the most articulate. He had brought a lot of things to the culture. And let me tell you, after Don Cornelius, as far as bringing black music to networks and stuff, he probably was the next most important guy in the last 40 years. But I never felt the depth with his interviews, and I thought that because he had something that others didn't have. He had something, He had a frontline role to the who's who, but he, you know, just never evolved. That's the problem I had with Arsenio because he was catchy. Sometimes you got people who drive a car without having the license, or they have the right car, but they have the right car. They just have the wrong engine in it. They get the car to go, but they ain't the right. He had a lot going for him. Harvey, he just country pimpkin, country pimping. That's what he do. You know, he looks like he bored and don't like nobody and just all up to the um good for what he do. Cause he Family Feud is hey household guy stays working, but I wouldn't trust him. I didn't have to have Cat Williams say anything about Steve, but you see, they all like that. It's just that he found a stick, a niche that worked. Guy been around 35, 40 years. I mean, and I'm not gonna be dissing nobody how tough and cutthroat that business is. Everybody knows everybody takes people's jokes. Everybody knows how backstabbing and um insecure people got. There is no It don't take Scooby Doo to figure that out. This is the entertainment industry, okay? If you got feelings and you got needs and wants, you in the wrong business. So that's why I didn't understand the big deal about Cat Williams with Shannon Sharp, because Cat is saying what's been known. Those are just like playing Darcy. Oh, Winnie the Pooh, Winnie the Pooh. He's a fake journalist because aside from LeBron James, who cares what he has to think about anything else? Who cares if he, talking about Allen Iverson? First of all, you really out your jurisdiction. Just go back there and eat some Twinkies and some burgers. Nobody care what your takes are. Hot takes with you. You got to judge. You followed a high school phenom, and he happens to have a long, successful career on the next level. And that's why you can wear that double chin and triple X large suits. But no one paid to get your thoughts on Wemby, on Kawhi. I did a video about it. I mean, I could. I want to write about Windhorse because I want to talk about it. Because I remember I told you about Jack Haley. And I'm going to address Windhorse my way. I'll do it tomorrow. I did allude to it. I did do the Iverson video, which I did, and I alluded to it somewhat. Maybe I'll go a little bit more raw when I dissect Mr. Windhorse. But Winnie the Pooh ain't got no room to talk about nobody. He's not even what you call a journalist. How did he get his job? What college did he go to? The College of Allen Iverson. You really think I need to talk about that? I just got through talking about. I did a video today. It's coming out. I did the Pippen, Grant, and Luke. You'll see it. It's coming. All right. Well, they hoisted him out of Chicago Stadium when they won. But I hope to God this guy's 30 years later still crying about spilled milk. Look, Jordan was a 100% butthole, okay? He was not a nice dude. I'm not going to sit here. If you didn't live to see it and you want someone who was around to talk about it, I'm going to tell it to you. He was not nice. He hurt people's feelings. He talked trash. He was very arrogant. But at the same time, Cats got rings out of it. Cats won. Did you win? Yes. you know. Um, I mean, I don't really understand all this coming out boasting and bragging against a guy that you made a lot of money off because you played with. You made history together. You're part of a three-peat. You won another ring with Phil Jackson, with Shaquille O'Neal. I don't know what you're crying about, Horace Grant. I don't know what you want. And Horace Grant isn't really. I'm a snob because unless you got a name or you done something, I really didn't waste my time with cats that were below. He called them out when they were playing together. Merle Chalmers did not wait 20 years later to say, "Oh, I have a problem with him." Of course, everybody saw Rio on the sidelines and LeBron. And LeBron would vent and go towards him because he wasn't going to do that to D. Witt or Bosh. He wasn't going to do that to Ray Allen. He wasn't going to do that to Udonis Haslem. He knew who to go after. But that was well documented. But ain't nobody coming out saying, "Oh, he held up the spotlight and we didn't get no rings because of." That's the difference. This mess that Pippen and Horace Grant and Luke Longley on is because they needed the bag. They didn't get the bag, and they were upset because Jordan got the ones because it was about him. You'll see my video. I did my video. You'll see what I said. I'm gonna tell you. I'll give you a part I said. I said it'd be like the Jacksons going out on tour without Michael and dissing him. I said, who do you think people came and paid money to go see? They like some things that you do, but they ain't loving what you do. They'll give you your little minute. They came to see the headliner. Michael Jordan was a headliner like Michael Jackson was. I am not trying to hear these ungrateful turkeys, bums. And I will say that about Pippen and Grant. It could have been better. Not Luke Longley. Luke Longley was a never was. He's just a token white boy who got him a passport to Australia because he wasn't that memorable. What was he going to do on the Lakers? Ron Harper was I don't know if you remember or not, and you were younger at the time. What was he going to do on the Lakers? I will tell you this. When they got Ron Harper was a great fit. Because Hart could defend, he could shoot, he could score. He was still athletic, and he understood the nuances. What was Pippen going to do? Kobe was next coming up. Now, I would have loved to have seen Pippen. Now, let me tell you a story. If Pippen had been able to get out of Chicago with Horace Grant and go to Orlando and play with Shaq and say, I don't know, Nick Anderson come off the bench. I don't know, Dennis Scott come off the bench. You run Pippen, Penny, and Shaq and Ho Grant. And him and Shaq would have been scary. But see, Phil didn't trust him. And he knew. Okay? Phil knew. Saw it happen in Portland. That's all I ever keep going to. I cut to the chase. He beats the Lakers in game 7, and then he beats Shaq at peak prime with an upcoming Kobe, but really was Shaq was the dude. And Phil, a 67 win team. He beats them, then he goes and beats the Pacers with Reggie, Mark Jackson, and Larry Bird. You win all that. We're having a different discussion about you today, Scottie Pippen. You're top 5, maybe top 3. Because to win that, it'd be hard pressed. You're somewhere between 3 to 5 ever for life if you do that. Especially how big Shaq was and Phil and then go and beat Bird and the Pacers. That would put you in. Then that debate between him and Jordan would be the one. Yeah. That would have been the one. But we don't have that. We don't look at your rings the same we look at Magic's or Duncan's or Shaq's. We don't. Or LeBron's, or Dwayne Wade for that matter, or Kevin Durant's, or Steph Curry's, Bill Russell's. We don't. You seen as a sidekick. A very fortunate sidekick and very talented. But you're not in the argument. And that's all I'm trying to get him to understand. He had his chance. I don't count that. They were too old. Barkley was too old. Olajuwon was too old. I don't count that. I see. That'd be like me nitpicking, and I know you will, but that's nitpicking for me. That I don't even use that against him. Portland is the one. I give them a pass with Houston because they were an old team. I give them a pass there. The style didn't work. I saw them with Houston. It didn't work. Rick Alderman's style in Portland complemented what he was doing. He was the leader on the team. He had a young Rasheed Wallace. Jermaine O'Neal was a puppy back then. You had Arvydas Sabonis. You had Stoudemire. You had a team that was there. You were in the Western Conference Finals. You had a lead against the Lakers. You had a 15-point lead, Game 7 in LA, and you choked the fourth quarter. You blew it. I don't talk about the Houston run. I don't talk about him coming back to Chicago. I'm talking about 2000. That to me is the reason why a cat who could have been, had he wins it all, we're talking maybe 3 or 5 ever. Now we look at Scottie Pippen in the 32 to 48 range, maybe 28 to 43 range all time. That's how drastic that was. His passing. He never gets his due as a passer. As a fact, you'd be surprised that he doesn't have more triple doubles. I mean, the guy could pass. And I think the fact that his smarts has been downplayed because everyone thought he was just a big old log. He was a smart player. He understood positioning. He did. And if you watched him from Orlando to Miami, there was three different versions of him. It was that Giannis like in Orlando. There was that posterizing unstoppable force in LA. And then in Miami was he deferred. He did spin moves. He was doing a little bit of everything. So it was a balance. It was a more like a more finessed, more polished, different take. But he was three different levels to his dominance and his run. But his passing is definitely underrated. Um, I think sometimes his shooting ability, everything is always seen as him in the air. He could shoot a bit. He could definitely use his hands. He could definitely use his hands. And like I said, he's definitely been underrated, underappreciated. But that's done on purpose, though. You know, they don't ever want to talk about him the way they're supposed to. You know, they don't. I think the most underrated thing about him was that his wheels, like he could move. What's happening? How you doing? What's happening, Olivia? What's happening? Glad to have you. His wheels, he could move. Barkley was a very mobile cat. All right, thanks for stopping by. He was a very mobile cat. Um, you know, Barkley was a lot more. You know, he was mobile. Like he go coast to coast. I told you he was the best player I saw in the Olympics in '92. His left hand. People don't realize how he can drive with that left. And he gets in the lane, it's almost like he's posting you up. He did that to Anthony Davis the other night. He had that double clutch pin, drive, go, stop. 80 went, hit a shot, shot it over. He's underrated by the rim. He can drive. That leads me to know that he could have made it back in the day because no one gives him his due for his strong left. I don't know if you remember that game two against LeBron when he went one on one out and LeBron challenged him to the rim and he laid that shot off the backboard and he couldn't get him. Underrated skill of Butler. He's strong in the mind, which is a strong suit, which I think enables him a lot more than sometimes his game. He's really stronger. He builds up a lot and he kind of picks his spots. I watch him. That's why he gets away with what he does in the post because he doesn't get his due. He has a strong mental capacity to drive. Um, he wills himself, you know. Not the most talented player by no stretch, and not like Steph, but I'm gonna tell you something. Butler gets himself in a groove, he can look scary. That's why the postseason, that's why they deal with him. But that don't mean he's exempt from being, you know, um, half-hearted, you know. Glad Olivia went to stop by. Whoever you are, glad you came through. Appreciate you. I think it's defense because he's more stronger with blocks. He really has really made himself into a distinctive shot blocker. You know, and it's kind of like an underrated thing where he's concerned. Oh yeah, I might have to do a video about that whole fan that said that epithet to him. Yeah, thank you for mentioning him. I got to do that video about that whole thing with Durant and that fan in Dallas who called him out his name. Yeah, thank you for mentioning Durant. His defense. We have those people. Thank you, Tommy. We have appreciate that, Tommy. We have those people that come through. We definitely do that. But glad to have you, Tommy. Appreciate you. Yeah, I don't really, and I'm gonna tell you something. With pandemic life, I was glad that the fans didn't get to come in, and I missed that. They really don't need the fans, to be honest with you, because they make all their money with the broadcasters. If you offended that I said that, I understand, but hear me out. They make their money through broadcast. They don't really need people in the stands. They really don't. There have been some very derogatory people towards Russell Westbrook, to LeBron James, to this thing with Durant and others. They say the N word, they pour liquor, they do stuff. They've been very disrespectful. Because I always told you before, they look at them like they feel hands, and I hate to say it, that's the way I look at it. They pay them, but what are they paying? You don't need to go through that. You should go to appreciate. If you want to boo, that's fine. You want to say you suck, that's fine. You start talking about people's families and being derogatory and calling them out of names, and you're crossing the line. So I have a problem with that. I'm glad you came through, and appreciate your Tommy. Glad you came through. And if you have any questions or anything you'd like to say, feel free. Glad you came through. Glad to have you in the house, TB. I like it. Your name is very distinctive too, Black Sand. I like that. Very distinctive. But we touch on different things when I do my live stream. Sports, music, movies, politics, different segments. We talk on different things. So, whatever we want, whatever going through you, I'm gonna be very respectful, keep it cool and cordial, but however what you want to talk about, we talk about, you know, different topics. I don't have any limits here. As you can tell, if you read up for, we're going from Sylvester Stallone to Kevin Durant. So that's how wide the range is. And you never know what I get asked. It can be about entertainers. Someone might ask me about Usher. Someone might ask me about what's happening. Whatever topic you want. I don't really have a particular one today. I never do because I kind of let the phone kind of go where it want to go in the sense that, like if you want to talk politics, that's cool. If you want to talk about sports, is cool. Movies, singers, you know. Sometimes it'd be spiritual. I had a comment up above, purpose in life. So I mean, it all depends. It's a universe. I like to create a universal theme. I don't have like a one thing that I'm into because my mind allows me to go there. That's not no brag. That's just how I see the world. Because you get hit with different things. You're not going to be when you walk up a ladder. You're looking left and right and forward and watching below you. Know what I mean? People don't think about it. If you're walking up a ladder, you got to make sure you go left foot, right foot, look to the top, get to your spot, make sure you're safe, and then you look there when you come back down. So I don't, uh, whatever you want to talk about. The thing that he was underrated on to me is how cohesive he gets his team. Now you would see him with a star player, one guy, but he gets them all together. I think that's the greatest thing that man does. He tried that with Philly. That didn't work against the Lakers, but he did get that one game. He brought it with Detroit. He won the series. They got to buy into what he does. I think that's the best skill he has over any other coach. I know Pat Riley always takes all the team guys to do it, and Phil Jackson did too. They did it with players. I think Larry Brown buys everybody to be accountable because there's a certain nuance that he does. Yeah, we've done the underrated skill is the new topic. And I like this one too. I think that when we talk about different, again, you can go different ways with this one, but that's a good one because when I think of him, he's very cohesive for how he gets. Because if you remember the finals with Philly with Iverson, and then you saw the Larry Brown with Detroit, it was the same blueprint formula. It's just that they bought in and it worked because the Lakers were discombobulated with Shaq and Kobe and all that. Pat Riley, um, underrated skill I would say is how unified he can be. Um, with Riley, he gives you that workman like thing, blue collar, but he gives you that pizzazz and that style. but then he really brings it cohesively together in a way that it ties like we're gonna be as one. And then and then when he wins, then he's like, "Yep, we got it. See the ring, success." You get different dynamics with him. I think in Doc's case, it's the fact that he gets a lot out of certain role players. Like that's a knock. That's a key that he got from Pat Riley. He gets a certain run out of people, and it works for a while. It works for a while. That's one of his strengths. That's underrated. He is a great X's and O's dude. There is no one. He's one of the few guys, and Huey Brown could do X's and O's too. But Larry Brown is like Pop. They X and O's coaches. X and O's coaches ain't like other coaches. You got coaches who are polishers, like Phil Jackson. Pat Riley's like a tweener of that, but more of a polisher. Popovich did it more polisher because he has to build and mold. Larry Brown can realistically step off ground and get his guard the way he needs to get, you know. Well, he built up the Clippers. I mean, if you go back to his coaching style, now it didn't work in New York, okay? But he got the Sixers to the finals. They never do. They never do. The Sixers played hard against the Lakers. It's just that Shaq was beasting and feasting. When they beat the Lakers with Detroit, Chauncey Billups, Rip, all of them were in unison. They were the team of misfits. That alone, when I say misfits, Rasheed Wallace will verify what I'm saying. Nobody wanted those guys. They came together as one. Then they got cocky when they played the Spurs the next year, and that's on them because they brought Antonio McDyess. They tried to get a little more prettier. When they got rid of Larry Brown, they had Flip Sanders. That's when I knew Miami was going to beat them because Flip was a good coach. Brown was a great coach. And then there is a different tiers to how you intense you get. They weren't the same. They weren't the same team without Larry. But Larry burns bridges too. I told you, Larry's one of those guys. He gave you about 3 years. You get your juice. Well, he thought Iverson was being a punk. Iverson liked to bully, like to have be a little bit more cocky, and they were gonna have because Brown was a guard, and he wanted him to be his best. He rode him. He had to build Detroit too because it took getting Rasheed in place. It took all those guys to be cohesive. Chauncey was not that guy. That's one of the reasons why it's on the fence if he's a Hall of Famer or not. Richard Hamilton was not that guy. It fit. Ben Wallace was that dude. Ben Wallace was top 10 MVP candidate who was great at one thing he did. And that worked. Tayshaun Prince played his role. But when they got Rasheed, that sold the pants back up. And then you put them back on. And then what you had. He did have to build that team because he built them. He did. He brought the best officer. He had to build them into the next level. They had to work cohesively. They had to work the way they paced themselves and what they got to a point. That's what he did. He taught from that. He said, you do that, you create good offense. You got to practice those habits. And he got at Chauncey and he got at Rip the same way he got at Iverson. Because guard play is where he did it. He expected his bigs to be his bigs, but his guards had to be a certain way. That's why he was effective. And Chauncey wasn't always that dude. That's why people are on the fence about Chauncey's greatness, and he's not so polarizing to me because I look at him as a good player, not a great player. But because you got spoiled by them runs in Detroit, and you got the Finals MVP, Chauncey Billups is almost like Steve Nash, but not as good as Nash, but good in the sense that he got later on in his career because he didn't do much his first few years till he got to Detroit, and then the right coach, right system. Well, they two different coaches. two different coaches. You can make that argument. They two different coaches. Phil is a polisher. You know, let me give you an example. It's like in music, right? You get a guy like Quincy Jones, polisher, goes find songs, puts pieces. Producer Tom Bell used to work with the singers, the musicians, the whole nine to put and wrote the configurations for putting the music and everything together. So you go da 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 da. Quincy could do that too, but he wasn't hands on like that. He brought a team. Now I'm gonna do that, but difference between the way they do it. Um, Phil's underrated skill is his role players. We got because look at Luke Longley. Luke Longley right here thinking he belonged with Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant to talk trash. That's Phil Jackson's genius. Phil could take Jed Buser, who looked like a used car salesman, and Winningham and Will, and make them look like they belong top tier. He had guys who bought into what was going on. That's the mark of a great coach. Let's look at Steve Kerr. Just saying. That's great coach. Yes, because he did it with Iverson, but then when he did it with Chauncey, except Detroit was a more balanced team. They're starting five, and you gotta take your Shaq's gonna whip your behind. Kobe got cute, tried to shoot too much, dance, hit that game winning game too. But they knew they had him. They knew they had him. They knew that the best way because of the friction and tension. He said it on the sideline. He said they're not playing together. They weren't worried about Rick Fox. They weren't worried about Derek Fisher. Gary Payton was not really a field dude, so he fell right into the trap because he liked to dribble deep into the post. They weren't worried about him. Fish was a better fit, but they went with Gary. Karl Malone got hurt. He was older. I'm telling you, that was what happened with Detroit. Detroit found a way to pounce on them, double trap on Kobe. We got to take our shots with Shaq, but we're not worried about the rest of them because they don't score enough points. They don't have that deep of a bench. And Chauncey was able to get off. Rip was able to, they all were able to get theirs in. And Rasheed Wallace, who's going to guard Sheed? That's what I'm talking about. Knowing your matchups, that's what X's and O. I think that he got them to play together is an underrated skill. Meaning Hakeem had to trust Kenny Smith. He had to trust Marielli. He had to trust the process of those guys. They were on fumes, but he never quit. He knew they weren't the most talented. That's why all their series went long and all that. I think that does work against Hakeem's legacy in the sense that he never had a sure, except for when they swept Orlando, but he never really had what I call a surefire look like a confidence. They played hard. They were battle tested, and you had to fight them. And he had tooth and nail with him. And in truth, that really is a lot of it in the NBA. Teams are as talented, people are as talented. It's just that getting a chance. So he made the most of what he had. And I think he is underrated, being able to be determined, to be a fighter. He never backed down as a coach. So I have much respect for what he accomplished. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not gonna argue with that because I saw it firsthand. He could back you up, he could post you up. He's not gonna get the romantic of Steph Curry or Iverson or Isaiah Thomas or even Stockton for that matter, because Stockton shot that pretty outside shot. But Gary would post your butt up, hit you off that glass. He would go at you. He would put his body into you. Gary wasn't no punk with that. He didn't shoot no threes, but he could have a nice, all right J, and he could float. He could score. People forget that about him, and that's a good one. That's a good one. Good call with Gary. I co-sign because Rain Man got all the love. Everything was about Sean Kemp, and Kemp was something else. But Gary is underrated as a scorer. He really is, and he could post you up. He could back you up. He could create. He was underrated. So I agree. Passing is one of them. Yeah, passing, passing. I think he doesn't get enough due uh for I'd say pretty much flushing because a lot of people talk more about his fadeaway, which was sick, but his flush drive to the hole, His passing and flushing, I think, are two of the most underrated about him. Passing game was sick. I think his driving, because Stockton could break you off. His handles is actually underrated. I told you back in '98, there was the Knicks did that to Jordan, full court press back. The only other person I saw they tried against was Stockton, and he beat that full court press in the back. Stockton underrated with handles. Stockton could move that rock. He was what you call fundamental. His shooting was legit, Pat, but his handles. He didn't get you didn't pick his pocket a lot. You really had to like stick someone big on him and bump him. You didn't really pick his pocket. I think his ability to move, because he could really utilize his body. I think he really had a skill set that was he was very athletic, but he really could stretch his body around. And I don't think people really took that consideration of how versatile and stretch he had. I think it's been kind of I think it's been kind of taken for granted. I think he really was that good with his body. You know, he was more athletic than he gets credit for. I mean, he tried the finger roll and he had the outside shots and all that, but I'm talking about where he would use his body and move. He was very mobile. I don't think that gets enough talked about because people be quick to say Dave Robinson. Patrick was very mobile, very mobile. I think once upon a time. Um, Nick could move. Nick could move. Nick could move. I think the underrated is that he was how he could move without the ball because he could really utilize his body. You have to know how to plant yourself when you're the way he would leap in his athleticism. He could really move with and without the rock. Kareem, I think how light on his feet. I don't think his feet get enough praise. Not only just to plant yourself with a skyhook, but you got to really understand your timing. You got to understand your lift. You got to understand the proximities you are. I think that that's very underrated. He really had great footwork, and he could go left, right with that hook. He hit you with that shoulder, and then hit you. He had good technique with his feet. He had to have a cadence, and like he goes shoulder, shoulder, hook. He had good footwork. He had a smooth touch. I think it's been underappreciated, you know. And he had to learn that early on. I do. I think his footwork is vastly underrated. I think Meek without the rock. Everybody sees him hanging in the air and moving, but he actually, you know, how he would move. They just never had no structure in Atlanta. That's all. He didn't play with the Scottie Pippen type. I don't think he was Jordan level in terms of like at that kind of talent. But Dave Robinson, I think the underrated ability that he doesn't get enough is his defense. Not near enough. He could really defend really well. His shot blocking, his anticipation. You know, he's one of those guys because of Tim Duncan come along and other centers were more dominant like Shaq and Hakeem. He gets lost in the shuffle, and he's seen as kind of like the soft dude. But he was There's nothing with Tim Duncan. I mean, the only thing I would tell you is that he could shoot the three. He had a top of the key shot. He could shoot outside. He really had a good outside shot. And I do believe if he played today, he'd shoot that three ball. He'd be scary. I think that's the thing that you really didn't know. Nothing with Reggie. And I'm going to tell you why. Because he did one thing great. Everything else was, I didn't really think of much of him as a passer or rebounder. He just would mainly hit those shots. That's what he did. That's all he really did. So, pretty a one trick Johnny to me. If he had done any other thing, like if he could have rebounded, they would have beaten the Bulls in '98. If he was a halfway defensive fender, would have found a way to get up under Kobe in 2000. So There's nothing that I can really say. I saw his offensive repertoire. Um, the only thing with Reggie kick out, but they outlawed that. So there you go. Harden would shuffle that beard and make a then get the You could say that, but it's just all part of what he did. I mean, he was more flourishable because of his outside post jab. He had the post jab, the Euro step, the fallback. That was his bread and butter. That's how he got to the free throw line. That's how he created a lot of what he did. Post up game to an extent, but I mean, that's if you're a diehard Harden fan, you may give him that. You know, if you are. If you're not really going to give him much. I don't really think much more else about his game, to be honest with you. I think he could shoot, but everybody's fixated on his handles. But I actually think he had a nice fadeaway. He could shoot outside shot. But everything became because of his handles. Because he punch. He's almost like a box. Like he go when he had his. How he did it, and that overtook most of his game. And he was good for his time. Really good. Handles was tight. You know. But I think sometimes in this case, he got kind of caught up in gimmicky ball because I just think that could have been more. Just the fact of how he could get his shots off, and he was very fluid with his fadeaway. Uh, he could score all over the court. I don't think a lot of people realize how just incredible of a pure scorer he was. And when people get excited about Carmelo, they get excited about Durant. This guy was in that kind of sentence. Had he been healthy, he could very well be in the 30,000 club because that guy could score with the best of them. I mean, he gave you the business. He was that good. It's just that his wheels, at the time. But you talk about somebody who could Bernard King was scary. He was scary. I love me some Zeke. Zeke's one of my favorites. I think his ability to score. I don't think people give him enough credit. He downplayed his scoring to make that team win. People forget 40 years ago against Denver, and they broke that record against and him and Kelly Tripucka. People forget how he was a high volume scorer. He could have been, but he might not have won no rings. He sacrificed that to keep it in a 19, 20 point pocket and be assist man and steals and stuff. People don't realize how that he had crazy ball handling skills. He's one of the most underrated ball handlers. People don't understand Zeke's skill set. He wasn't that nice. He wasn't that nice because he could float on you. I mean, all you gotta do is look at that game six in LA on one leg, that third quarter. I think it was the 3 point shooting, but that came later in his career because he actually became good. He sucked early, but then he got good. And I don't think he get enough credit for it. He actually gotten better. He actually worked on his game, became a better shooter. Post up game took time, but that was part of what he did early on in his career. But when he learned how to shoot threes, I remember a time when people used to let him be self checked. They wouldn't even go out there when he shot threes. He got good, that changed. I'm just saying. I think it's his three ball. That's why I come down with Kid. His defense, I think that because he did a good job against Shaq early on. He did a good job against Karl Malone. He was actually a good defender at once upon a time, and you know, once upon a time, he did up pretty nicely. It's just that whole Rain Man thing and leap in the air and all that, got the best of his career. And that's all people remember. They don't even talk about his other aspects of his game. You know, people forget about that. But again, he brought that on himself too. You know, but he did have it though. I mean, I saw it. I saw it. He's one of those guys though that you're gonna kind of forget unless you remember because they're not gonna talk about him. Bird gave a lot of people a 40 burger. I mean, you know, that, that Larry Bird wasn't that nice. He wasn't nothing nice. I mean, I hold Larry Bird in high regard. Bird wasn't nothing nice. He did. I grew up watching Bird, and he was cold. I mean, the dude could shoot. You couldn't stop him. You couldn't stop him. You know, they don't make him like him no more. I know people gonna come out and try to come at me about Luca. Luca ain't no Larry Bird. Luca can score and he's got all around repertoire, but his team, until I see them going to a finals, don't bring him up to me. He's got one Western Conference Finals in his resume. Okay, Larry Bird stayed deep. He'd make Luca cry. He'd make Clay cry. There's a lot of them he'd make cry because you'd have to play against him. Yeah. There are very few people. Curry probably. Durant would have to step his game up against him. You know. But and you put him with Tatum and Brown, they coming out the East 7 years in a row. And they're going to win by 3 or 4 chips. Mark it. Mark it. And he tell them where to be and how to go. He didn't really step that hard to Durant. You gotta remember, it was a pinky toe. He really ain't stepped that hard to Tatum. See, when you say that though, you gotta understand who I'm talking about. Yeah, he beat Durant, but it was close. That was a shootout. Tatum had him. He got that finals. Bird would eat up Giannis. Bird would eat Giannis up too. You see Giannis as this mobile freak and all that. Bird would eat him too. Milwaukee don't play no defense. And Bird can beat you different ways. And if he played with Tatum and Brown, Giannis would be crying to get out of Milwaukee. He sure wouldn't be stuck with no Dame. He'd have to get some enforcers. I'm telling you. Giannis, I know where you're coming from. Yeah, athleticism. But once we get past athleticism, ain't stopping no Larry Bird. And there were, take my word for it, there were athletic guys that were better. I think his underrated skill was his mobility because believe it or not, he wasn't super fast. He help defense was a big one. He always circling around and he was looking for the passes. He kept his guys fed. He made the right call, right decision. I think the guy was always in motion. He got rebounds. He hustled. He did different things. The hustle plays is what made him, to me. You did not outwork Larry Bird. And to me, that's what I always tell anybody. Don't let nobody outwork you. People can be better than you, more skilled than you. That's just some work advice I give. Don't let nobody outwork you. Nobody outwork Larry Bird. I think Parrish's dominance in the box where you weren't gonna move him from that ugly shot he took and how he utilized his domain. That's what made Parrish so special. No one ever took Parrish off of his take. He maintained his domain. He maintained his domain. That to me is what made Parrish distinctive. Um, I think his underrated skill was deferring. He didn't like to, but he was his best when he deferred. When he deferred to Shaq, when he worked with Gasol, I think those were his best skills to me. To me, I think that's where his strength was. He was more. Dang, Grayson Allen got 24 tonight. Woo. Um, when he deferred, he was more dangerous. That's what that to me is where he was most dangerous. Um, he got. I just turned just looking at this thing because they're up by 12 right now, and I was cracking up when I saw this stat that Grayson Allen. I'm like, what? Dang! I knew the Lakers were gonna lose tonight because they can only win one, lose one, especially when they play against a legit team. I'm not wide. I just turned around. I'm not really book checking it out. I don't want to watch that mess because I checked the I'm on the computer. I'm not I was checking out stat lines. That's all. I don't waste my time with that mess. I knew they were gonna lose tonight. They knew they weren't gonna beat no Phoenix. You know, it just shows you how average and ordinary they are. That's all. His ability to get better because he obviously wants to get better, and I think that he wants to learn, and I think having a coach like Jason Kidd is going to be huge for him. So he knows that this is probably the best coach he's going to get in terms of where he's trying to get being a playmaker. So I think that's an underrated trait right there. It's not just one thing. It's a culmination. I saw that. Let me tell you something. A couple years when we get a real point guard and get some stuck, AD gonna be scared to stay in the league if he got to deal with that every night. And AD don't want to put no. He don't want to get his behind in the box. So Wimby gonna be owning some things. He gonna own some things. He can. He's gonna, like I said, he just needs to get the right guard, and he just need a few pieces. That's all. That's all. That's all. Believe me, he got a chance to really do some things in the league. Boy, the Lakers suck though. Mm, mm, mm. When they get beat, they get beat. They can be getting on crazy numbers. No, he ain't got no reason to be afraid because he, he's at the start of his career. There's nothing to be scared of. I think the way he communicates without the rock. I think sometimes when he's playing, you know, he gets guys to move a certain way, and I think that's one of his skills. I think he's more effective when he's rotating it, like he's pointing and moving, as long as it don't come down to him. But I think if he was more of an assist man and didn't try to score so much, or because he goes his rhythms is kind of off like that. But I think when he utilizes the floor, that's where his motion is strongest. I can't say about it as a player. As a coach, I just think that he always got a lot of his guard play. I always liked the way he utilized his teams. He got a lot with Mookie and them, and he did with Dennis Johnson and Gus Williams. He definitely had a blueprint for what worked. That's how I know the guy could coach, and it definitely translated. Teams are well coached, well balanced. can't say as a player. I just seen some highlights, and he had a nice outside shot, but again, I can't really say. As a coach, I think the way Boston was able to rotate, he definitely understood rotation. He got them to step up, and they rotated nicely, and they were able to make assignments. You know, he's underrated as a coach. You know, but they had good rotation when he coached. His most underrated skill had to be the fact to me. This is just me. Um, his ability, because you have to be a special type of an athlete to not only lead the league in scoring and assists and rebounds, but his overall ability to run the floor, to utilize different spots on the floor, and how he could dictate the lanes. You know, you have to have an uncanny, a unique ability to utilize your skill set. You know, people say that about Elijah one, but Chamberlain's skill set and his ability to manipulate and go finger roll, dunk, go here, there. It's uncanny, on the defensive end too. He utilized his skills, his body. He always took care of himself enough where that's amazing. That's amazing. So I think he doesn't get his due for his freak, not just his athletic, his ability to utilize his body. I think that's the thing I would say about him more than anything, because he had greatness, but he utilized his body in such a way. Um, Underrated skill was his playing beyond his talent level. It's like what I see with Bam. He wasn't the best. He was in shape and all that, but he wasn't the best scorer. He was a really good defensive player, very good, almost great, but he overachieved in the sense that he made himself into a guy that you had to deal with, and he was going to give it to you. And I think that is, he's a bigger version of Jimmy Butler, though Butler's a better scorer, but they kind of like yin and yang. And that's what Bam reminds me of. But you see, I always tell you there are tiers to this. I liked Alonzo a lot, but he was never Shaq. Okay. Yeah, right now. But again, we're gonna find out what he does in the postseason. I don't really want to. I like what I see in the regular season. I need to see what he do in the postseason. Him and Chad go coexist. You know, Shea with a legit two guard or someone who could float off of him would be scary. If I could bring a young Clay Thompson with Shea, I could answer your question. Guy who could straight up get his shot at the perimeter, and a guy like Shea could rotate off the rock, and there you go, give and go. Shea's asked to be a different type of, because like I said, it's a different era. Um, his mental understanding, like making himself better. I think that's an underrated skill in itself, because he was not this dude 7, 8 years ago. He was even not this dude 5 years ago. But now he made himself into a household name, a force. He just worked on his game. And I think that him working overall to the task is an underrated skill, that he decided to make himself better to a standard. Because think about it. You can make the case he's the best player or the second best player. That was not the case 8 years ago. You didn't even, this guy looked like he was going to be like his brother. And now we sit here and debate him. Where is his place in NBA history? So his motivation is an underrated skill. I think his underrated skill, to me, is his running ability, because he never stops running. He always is moving, not just his mouth and his hands. He's always moving. A lot of people don't see how he utilizes his body. It's like he's always moving. He's not dead weight. And he's not, even if he's beaten, he's still moving. He keeps himself moving. He keeps himself like always on the go. You know. The only time his IQ comes up to me is when he gets on somebody he can pounce on. It's not somebody that I think his motives what impressed me the most about Draymond, how he run. Jokic, I think his confidence. He takes those long threes, he drains them. He makes those passes. His confidence is on another level. You know, he really has gotten himself into like robotic status. He really understands the game, and it's scary. Kawhi, his shooting. I don't think people realize how strong when he shoots in the post that he has a strong man shot, and he got a pure quality to it too. Like he has a touch. Think it because he's so raw and physical, but he's got a soft touch. Like his shot is just like you know. I think passing, but also think how he utilizes the court. He's not staying still, so he's more mobile and he's also agile. And I think that's impressive with me. His passing you can, but I like how he goes top of the key, post, turn around. He utilizes a lot of the court. He understands spacing really well. I think that's a great characteristics of his game that doesn't get talked about enough. I think that how he, to me, compartmentalizes things. He has a very uncanny, unique ability you know, to basically say, I'm going to score a little bit here. I'll do this. I'll do that. He compartmentalizes. That's how he's able to at least make sure he stays in double figures or how he gets his, when he was compartmentalizing, he's like a strategist with that. That's one of his best skills that he can do that he can actually pinpoint when he needs to take off, when he wants to, you know. And when he added outside shots to his game, you know, he does stuff in a way that you sit there and you marvel because he creating the scoring, he's creating these avenues for himself, you know. And that's what I think is his underrated skill that he can dictate. Really, he's one of those guys that can dictate that. Um, Getting a lot out of his role players to the point where it's kind of like a trait that Pat Riley did and Phil, but he really, like a guy like Patty Mills, he really gets guys so driven and they come up and he knows that they're going to have special assignments. And I really noticed that those little things he does to detail because part of his championship pedigree and run is not only, the top tier guys, but he makes everybody accountable. So, and it worked. It worked with Avery Johnson, with Sean Elliott. You look at through the years, he's had guys that he's definitely utilized. And if you don't fit that with him, you don't make it. I'd say just his determination because you gotta remember he wasn't even, a starter. And the guy had a lot of heart, a lot of drive. And I think that that's an underrated trait because he goes at you hard. He went at you hard, you know, and he played that way. He wasn't the most skilled. He wasn't like the most popping. He wasn't the best shooter, none, but he played at you hard. And you couldn't, he was going to get his. He made himself so important 30 years ago for better or for worse in game 7 against the Rockets that Pat Riley said, forget Patrick. Just let Stark shoot. We lost, but we live with it. That should tell you something right there. He wasn't better than Derek Harper overall for career or Anthony Mason, but he played so hard and he put it, you had to respect it. That's why he got the earn. So I'll tell you a story. I remember when he was with the Bulls and he was coming in and he was looking at the uniform and he was like, he had this facial expression like, I'm just here. I'm only here because they signed me. It was kind of like a Marshawn Lynch. I'm only here. It was awkward. He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be there. But that was where he ended up being. He didn't want to be there though. I remember that. I remember. I laughed too. It was hilarious too. It was hilarious. You had to kind of see it. You wouldn't have believed it. But he didn't want to be there though. He didn't want to be there. I remember it. It was early OOs. You know, he didn't want to be there though. It wasn't that memorable, and it was near the end of his career. But I had nothing but respect for Starks though. He was a tough dude. They don't make them like him too often. That's when guys were earning their spots on teams and they was fighting. Well, because Parrish wasn't gonna take no trash. Parrish played with Bird. He dealt with all that. He dealt with the top tier superstars, so nobody was going. And Jordan was trying to punk people. See, I told you before, Scotty and Horace and Luca talking that Jordan was a punk and pompous and a butthole and all that. Tell me something I didn't know. But you won with him. You made history with him. You weren't going to really do it by yourself. And you guys weren't the kind of guys that somebody was going to pay a lot of cash. They tried it with Scotty. How it turned out? Horace was always third kick. Okay. And Luke was the no kick. Okay. So, but Parrish could hold his own. Parrish could hold his own. But Parrish wasn't the only one to talk trash to Jordan in practice. Bill Cartwright did too. Bill Cartwright got at Jordan. Because Jordan liked to try to like fanboy guys and yep. Yep. So they don't, they don't I remember all that. I had this book, guy named Sam Smith, The Jordan Rules. If you haven't read it, get it. Tell you everything you want to know. That book was crazy too. There was a story in that book about one of the Chicago Bulls, one of the white players, and his wife had a baby. And guess what happened? They brought out a black baby. I kid you not. They never said who the white player was, but that's what I heard. The baby came out black. I know who it was. Yep. If you get a chance, Sam Smith, The Jordan Rules. I used to have that book. See, a lot of stuff I haven't even shared online because I read before there was mad, before social media, before AOL, all that. Before you even were really around to understand stuff. Books, follow all that stuff. Yeah, that was a true story. And then you heard about Jordan with that white blonde chick back in 91. He wasn't the father of the kid, but he was still ordered a pair of like $5 million or something. It was crazy. But he wasn't even the father of the kid. So there's a whole lot of stuff that went on back then that David Stern swept underneath the okay. Stern swept that underneath the carpet. There's a lot of stuff with Jordan. Jordan ain't no saint hardly. And when I get into talking about him, I'll stick to the court and stuff like that. But even on the court, yeah, there were people uneasy about things with him because there were rules for him. The league did want him to be anointed. They wanted him, he was a marketing tool, but they protect their assets. They do that with all superstars. That's why the NBA is a lot like WWF in that regard because everybody that blows up gets protected. It's the brand, and they all usually are in big cities. Because for the longest time, there was only a handful of cities that won titles. What you're seeing the last few years is a mirage. Okay, once we get past Toronto, the Golden State, Toronto won in 19, the Lakers, but Milwaukee, Golden State, Denver. No, because George Gervin felt he could take him. George was upset because he had to come in from the ABA to the NBA. He was older. Jordan had gotten all this limelight. A lot of those cats didn't feel it because they were labeled too black. They were labeled too street. This guy comes along doing pretty much what they did, and now David Stern's got shoes and Spike Lee and all this other stuff. That's gonna cause some tension. Plus, he's the new kid, but they feel like he didn't pay no dues and he got all this blow up, which he did kinda. You think about it, because he hadn't won nothing, and he had all this paparazzi. If you think about it, the Air Jordans came out. Spike Lee's talking about, do you know Mars Blackman? So that's 86, 87, 88. He did get the league MVP, and he was a scoring phenomenal lad, but he hadn't won nothing. You get how some guys would kind of be kind of resentful, kind of look at that. And he was the cat came out and got marketed by David Stern. So there is the backlash. I do get it. I don't talk about it always on these other due respect. Unless you come here and you ask me, then I'll give you my uncut. I understand exactly why Zeke feels like he do. Two things can be true at the same time. Zeke ain't wrong, and he got every right to come at him, but he got to kind of let it go too, because he made his situation. But I understand why he feel about the situation, because they did slurp Jordan something awful, and David Stern made sure that he was the anointed Negro. More so after Bird and Magic, he was the first that was the solo brother. Okay, so and that meant something. That was corporate America. Look, 40 years ago. If you weren't around, you ain't gonna understand. You see all these black marketing. You see Usher at the Super Bowl. You now, I first of all, I'm glad you came through, Ovila, but I don't I don't sing no Drake songs. I'm not a big Drake fan, but I appreciate that though. Maybe if you come to my if you come to this show more often, I promise you, I got to see you a few more times though, and I got to get me some strong water too. Well, Magic, J.R. Smith, when he ran by the hoop and he went backwards, that was a big blunder. Rich baby daddy. I ain't never been asked to sing a Drake song too, so that's interesting. But please come back again. I promise you, I will have it down pat. It's a little bit late now, but I'm. Well, Nick missed those free throws. That changed that series. But Nick was an experienced player. Kobe was an experienced player. Kobe was a puppy. He was undersized. He wasn't developed, and he wanted so much to impress, but he wasn't ready. And his coach fed into the hype, and it didn't. It came up, but it needed to happen. But I guys like Magic Johnson, and obviously, I will say J.R. Smith, guys who were veterans and they had those moments and lapses. That looks bad. LeBron's meltdown against the Mavericks game against in the finals. Yeah, take your pick. Steph Curry in the 2016 finals. Take your pick. Game 7. Throwing balls out of bounds behind. So there are situations. Yeah, in the playoff game. Because if they win that series, he probably goes to 4 straight finals. That's what people don't talk about. That's what they don't talk about. He was that close to 4 straight finals. And he was on another level at that time. And no one talks about it. No one talks about it. I love Zeke a lot. And I've seen other layers to him. But I can't, again, when you change the course of the game, I got to go with Curry. I just do. I can't lie about impact. I love Zeke too. I'm a big Zeke fan because I will defend Zeke's arguments against Jordan. I will defend him, and I will. But it got to change the course of basketball in my eyes. I just can't. Curry's too different. He too different because you have positionless players now. Everybody and their daddy got to shoot a three now. That's the Curry effect. Everybody, I don't care what tall you are, Victor Wamba got to come and shoot the three. He got to learn how to play perimeter. That's the Curry effect. That man changed the course of basketball. He got to be higher. You know, I might like Zeke more because I grew up with him watching him, and I watched them both. And Zeke is underrated. Okay, but Curry, when I can look at him 10 years ago and look at him now, and he's still about near averaging what he did. I mean, come on now. And he really don't have the half of the team he had, but he's still at a high volume. Come on. I liked him in Toronto when he was president. Not so much in New York. And he was all right in Indiana. They got some first rounds. See, Larry Bird was a very good coach. Zeke's not quite. He was. I thought he did his best stuff in Toronto, if I'm honest. Stunk in New York, and he was okay in Indiana. And I think I'll go back to it. Most great players don't make great coaches. Yeah, but they didn't really do much. You know, Bird got more out of them to me. They weren't bad, but Bird got more out of them. And Rick Carlisle got some out of them too. It just didn't really quite where it need to be. I think a lot of it was Reggie Miller. I just, you know, but I thought he did great in Toronto. I'll give you that. And had that stayed together, are you kidding me? Bird wasn't. It's too stressful. And Bird played ball the same a certain way. And I told a buddy of mine, I said, look, all due respect to Reggie Miller, Larry Bird is the most scariest guy on their bench. You can't have your coach as the most scariest that you got when your star player ain't that dude. So no, no. He didn't want that headache. It's too much stress. He didn't want that. He got to tell grown men what to do. And he came in a different era. So I knew that wasn't going for forever. When he didn't beat Chicago, had he beaten Chicago, well, they just didn't rebound. The last 5 minutes, they couldn't get no rebounds. That's why I said that was the thing. They didn't get the boards. They got out hustled on the glass. That was the difference. If they get some rebounds, chew some clock up, make some shots, they win the series. They didn't do it. If Bird had been playing, they win that series. Because he would have figured out at that pace. Just saying. I'm just saying. Came down against some loose ball, against some rebounds. Chicago got more boards, hit some big rebounds. That was it, really. Yeah, well, you clamp on him, you top size him, you know. You make him have to facilitate where he has to pass, and you pick your spots. Slow him from hard drives, make him hit that fadeaway, and then you kind of like traps. And then on the other side of the ball, with Reggie pushing off and moving and constantly moving, you set hard screens and picks. He didn't want to have to go through all that. But it was a winnable series for the Pacers. That's the reason why the Ryan stuff was probably saying we got to stop it. Because they did look beatable. They did look beatable. And you come back and, Bird might figure it out the next year. Well, New York might. You never know. It's hard to say. So I'm gonna be on for a couple more minutes because I've been almost 2 hours. So um, definitely come back tomorrow. Appreciate everything. It's been great though. This been a great Saturday. This was my latest Sunday night lives. I think I owed it to everybody because I was out most of the day. I'll be back at a regular time tomorrow. Um, Jerry Sloan as a coach, I think how well prepared his teams were. I don't think that ever gets talked about enough. I ever see with the defense and offense, but they were just well manicured. They really were well manicured with he was attention to details. Um, top flight, top flight. One of the greatest coaches to never win at all, but top flight, top flight. He was a precursor to Pop. Should have had like Larry Brown. Sloan was very. He got a lot of his role players, and guys play hard for him on both sides. I mean, they just never had a center that could be utilized, and that's the only reason why he didn't beat the Bulls. I really believe they had that Ronnie Cycli trade. Who knows? You know, but they were well coached though. I mean, Pop made you fundamentally. He had guys that were on tune. You know, so there wasn't a lot of what we call useless moving. He was legit. So I have much respect for Coach Pop. So he was a great coach, though. Great coach. New X's and O's, physicality. All right. I am going to officially call it a night. It's been a stone gas. Appreciate everybody that came through. Some interesting requests, some new faces. I welcome it. I hope more people come through. We're going to do this again. Appreciate you, everybody. Stay warm, stay safe, stay blessed. Till next time I catch you. Look forward to catch you another time. All right. Good night. I'm out. Peace.